A very good afternoon. Hello, world. From Sydney, Australia, I am Sashi Singh. And welcome once again to Sashi Singh's Talking Point. Shortly, we will be speaking to our chief guest for today, Mr. Savenaca Narube, the leader of the Unity Fiji Party. As this is going to be our last program for this year, we will catch up with our regular contributor, Nikhil Singh, shortly, who will bring the latest happenings of the week from Australia. Our contributor from Fiji, Mr. Dennis Rounds, is away in the UK, and hopefully he will join us in the new year. This is episode 5 of Sashi Singh's Talking Point and the last program for the year. We will be taking a break over the Christmas and New Year holidays. Our return date will be publicized on the SSTP Facebook page. So, to ensure you receive instant notifications, please like the page, and if you can, follow the page, and you'll be informed of all the happenings on the Sashi Singh's Talking Point program page. To begin our program, it's my pleasure to welcome our regular contributor Nikhil Singh to tell us of the key happenings of the political week in Australia. Nikhil, welcome to episode 5 and a very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Sashi. As always, good to be with you.
Pleasure having you on the show, Nikhil. Now, usually we start with what's making the news in federal and state politics, but today we lead with a very tragic story that's touched all Australians. Please elaborate on that.
Yes, Sashi, what a horrific tragedy, in fact, beyond comprehension. And I'm talking about the incident that happened on Thursday, where 5 students from the Hillcrest Primary School in Devonport, Tasmania, died as they took part in their end of year celebrations. Several grades 5 and 6 students fell from a height of about 10 meters, causing serious injuries when wind blew the jumping castle they were on into the air. These students would have been looking forward to their holiday period and Christmas, which is just only a few days away. This is heartbreaking, Sashi. As the Tasmanian Police Commissioner Darren Hines said on Thursday afternoon, these children were meant to be celebrating their last day of primary school. Instead, we are all mourning their loss. The coroner has attended the scene at the primary school, with the police investigation now underway to determine the cause of this incident. I must add that the Commonwealth, the Prime Minister, has reached out and offered full support, and from my understanding, he has also visited the families and the site. Our thoughts and prayers go out to those families and the state of Tasmania, Sashi.
Indeed, Nikhil, a very, very sad state of affairs with those young children, and Christmas so near as well. As you said, our thoughts and prayers to the family, and the nation mourns. All right, well, looking towards the political side of events, falling unemployment, extra billions pouring into government coffers in June, meaning lower deficits and debt are some of the positives captured in what could be the federal government's last major economic update before the federal elections. That's not a bad outlook now, is it?
Looks promising, doesn't it, Sashi? Treasurer George Frydenberg, our Treasurer George Frydenberg was all smiles, in fact, when he delivered the Mid-Year Economic and Fiscal Outlook, or MYEFO in short, this week. This could have been his last before the federal election next year. The outlook forecasts an improvement in the nation's unemployment rate, which is quite important, which the government expects will be 4.5% this financial year, falling to 4.25% in the coming years. A quicker than expected economic recovery from the COVID-19 recession has added billions of dollars to the government's bottom line. In fact, the MYEFO includes an extra $45.9 billion coming to the government coffers this financial year, which means lower deficits and debt. Consumers are spending, businesses are investing, and the jobs are coming back. But as the ABC puts it, that optimism relies heavily on Australia staying ahead of the deadly pandemic, with the government identifying COVID-19 and the new variants as the greatest risk to the economy. So I guess the key ingredient to the MyIFO update that was delivered this week, Sashi, is optimism. Let's hope it all stays on track. The MyIFO, however, much to the ire of the opposition and others, has revealed a $16 billion has been earmarked for unannounced federal government decisions. This is prompting concerns that billions of dollars could be pork-barreled in the upcoming federal election. So that remains to be seen, but promising outlook delivered this week, Sashi.
Well, pork barreling is another matter. You mentioned COVID. Let me touch on that. Australia yesterday recorded over 4,000 COVID-19 cases amid the new variant Omicron outbreak. How are states responding to this, particularly with Christmas just a few days away?
Well, Sashi, the state of New South Wales is contributing significantly to that national total. So in the past week, daily COVID-19 cases in New South Wales have surged from 560 to 248 in just 7 days. The number of cases in hospital has risen from 156 to 206, but fell by 9 yesterday, while the people in ICU has remained roughly steady at 26. Now, amidst all of this, Sashi, the New South Wales government, in a very bizarre move, in fact, in my opinion, a very bizarre move, proceeded to claw back some of the restrictions, including the mandatory mask wearing and removing the requirements to check in with a QR code. For example, if I was to go to Bunnings today, I will not be checked for mask or my check-in through the QR code. So that is gone. In comparison, the state of Queensland, who had also announced an end to mask wearing, has reversed their decision as cases started to surge in Queensland. What is quite interesting, which will cause, I believe, some friction, is that health experts are now demanding the New South Wales Premier, Dominic Perrottet, reverse course and reintroduce mandatory mask wearing for indoor environments as the new variant, Omicron, continues to surge across the state. The other bit of information which I thought is quite interesting is the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age is reporting that several members of Mr. Perrottet's current cabinet support reinstating compulsory masks and QR code check-ins to slow the spread of the virus. This is just ahead of a impending reshuffle of the New South Wales cabinet. So the comforting news, however, is that the take-up rate, as announced or shared by the Premier in a press conference this morning, is that the uptake of the booster jabs is on the rise. Let's hope we all keep safe. And if you haven't got a booster and you qualify for it, it's time for a jab.
Well, fingers crossed. And finally, I remember a couple of episodes ago, you reported on the story about the Fair Work Ombudsman as he was commencing proceedings against supermarket giant Coles for matters relating to the underpayment of employees to the tune of something like $115 million. I understand that another company is now under the spotlight.
Sashi, this issue appears to see no end. It is quite important because we're talking about workers and their take-home pay. I did report a few weeks ago that the Fair Work Ombudsman had accused Coles of underpaying more than 7,800 employees, a total of $150 million. This is not a small amount. This week, Bupa, which is Australia's second largest health insurer, just behind Medibank with a 26% market share, they have come out and said they underpaid more than a third of its workforce employed over the past 7 years by as much as $75 million. The underpayment was discovered as part of the company's compliance review. This underpayment were primarily driven by misclassifications and failing to apply overtime allowances or penalty rates to hours worked. So a lot of money, $75 million. Let's see that the remediation process takes shape. That's it from me, Sashi.
Well, Nikhil, thank you very, very much for your contribution in the last 5 episodes. I wish you and your loved ones a very Merry Christmas and a happy, happy New Year. Enjoy the festive season and stay safe. And we will see you in the new year on SSTP again.
Sashi, same to you, and allow me to say Merry Christmas to our viewers. And I'm looking forward to 2022. Stay safe. See you soon.
Thank you, Nikhil. God bless now. You're watching Sashi Singh's Talking Point, coming your way live from Sydney, Australia. The United Fiji Party is a registered political party in Fiji. It was registered as a political party in September of 2017 to present a credible alternative to the people. The party's leader is Mr. Savenaca Narube, the former governor of the Reserve Bank of Fiji. On 11th May 2018, the party announced a list of 14 candidates to contest the 2018 election. It subsequently submitted a list of 28 candidates, of which 5 were women. The party won 6,896 votes in the 2018 elections, which was 1.52% of the total. However, it failed to win any seats. On Sashi Singh's Talking Point this afternoon, it is my pleasure to welcome our chief guest for today, Mr. Savenaca Narube, the leader of the Unity Fiji Party. Nisam Bula Vinaka, and good afternoon to you, Mr. Narube.
Mula Vinaka Shashi Singh, thank you very much for your invitation to take part in today's session. I look forward to the discussion. Welcome
Thank
the
you very
viewers. Thank you
much.
very much.
Now, by way of introduction, let me state that our chief guest, Mr. Narube, was the governor of the Reserve Bank of Fiji for 9 years and permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance for 4 years. He has worked both at the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank in Washington, D.C. He was the chairman of the Reserve Bank of Fiji, Fiji National Provident Fund, Fintel, Fiji School of Medicine, Fiji Revenue and Customs Authority, and the Fiji Reinsurance Corporation of Fiji, and the Rakavi Trust of Fiji. Mr. Narube was also the director of the Fiji Sugar Corporation, Amalgamated Telecom Holdings, Telecom Fiji Limited, and Fiji Electricity Authority. He was the alternate governor for Fiji at both the IMF and the Asian Development Bank. Our chief guest is a public finance expert, macroeconomist, and policy strategist, having worked extensively in the Pacific in the last 40 years. Since leaving the Reserve Bank of Fiji in 2009, he has worked as a policy advisor in the Pacific in the areas of public financial management, monetary and financial policies, and organizational change. Let me say, this is a very, very impressive CV. Mr. Narube, let me begin by asking you, from a very successful financial background, from a public finance expert, to being the leader of the Unity Fiji Party, how did this transformation come about, sir?
Thank you, Shashi. Just a slight correction of the name of the party. You mentioned United Fiji Party is actually Unity Fiji
Mm-hmm.
Party.
Unity Fiji Party.
Thank you for that very long intro. Thank you very much. But before I answer that transition issue, let me just put this position that you mentioned into context. I think many people say, yeah, you have had many positions, but what actually have you or did you achieve? Uh, I think just to rattle off a few of my major or highlights of my career, in the 2000 and 2006 military coup, I helped rescue the economy and, of course, the financial position. That was very difficult. Not many people know how difficult it is. For instance, in 2000, we had to cut civil service uh, uh, salaries by 15%. I led a lot of delegations offshore. That was quite difficult to do at that time. The international community just shuns us and refuses even to listen to us. So that's quite a very difficult thing to do. I have had I think seven national budgets under three prime ministers, and I'm proud to say I'm only the PES finance that have posted a surplus in recent in modern history. Not have been achieved again. Uh, I think some people say that, yeah, you have a lot of economic and finance experience, but what else? I think you have mentioned wide experience in my career. I reformed the telecommunication sector, which is what we are enjoying today. As chairman of that telecom company called Fintel, I brought in the Southern Cross cable, and I think we are receiving that benefits now. You mentioned rugby, Fiji School of Medicine. I think it's just to confirm the width of what my experience have been. But let me tell you my story to that transition. Why politics? I think it's so important for us, the listeners, to understand the leaders' motivation to be where they are right now. I left the Reserve Bank in 2009. I had a bit of differences with the interim government at that time. I opposed the devaluation that they were wanting to the Fiji dollar. I refused to paint a rosier picture for what we were at that time, which they wanted me to do. So when they dumped the 1997 Constitution, you may remember that's in 2009, yeah, they dumped me as well because we were not working very well together in some of those major issues. But that was the background. But what I wanted to highlight was what actually was done. It was one of them, or perhaps the lowest point in my life. I've given 35 years of my life to this government, to this country. On that day, I was treated like a criminal, and that's uh, absolutely unforgivable. So the police were there. I couldn't get into my office just to get my personal. But so it is. I left, but and then went to consultancy, as you have mentioned. Yeah. But as I went around the consultancy, Shashi, I looked at our country. Hmm? I was concerned about the economic and the financial aspect of it, the increase in government spending. That was a red flag for me. I was concerned on dictatorship, on sensitive issues that we know has happened without consultations. The Great Council of Chiefs, the removal of safeguards of changes in our laws on land, the government interference into traditional way of life. And as that has created a lot of distrust and suspicion. So I had to make a decision. I could just sit back and watch. I've served my country. I've done what I needed to do. So I could just sit back and watch. I was in a very uh, good situation, in a better place, less stress. But you know what? I just couldn't sit back and watch. How would I be able to answer that burning question later on, say from my grandchildren, that I didn't do anything? I just sat there and watched. So me and two others decided to jump into this political arena. And I must say the transition has been difficult, very difficult. Mm. But I think the principles that you adopt in life is the same. So those are anchors in this. I'm afraid to say, Shashi, that people, I suppose, perhaps everywhere in the world, have very, very little regard, poor regard for politicians. And that's the same here in Fiji. I was asked the other day in Narere, after making a few points, that I was, the person said, I was a good leader, but I was not a politician. So I asked him, define politician for me. Eh? Is it for me to make promises and promises without fulfilling them? Is that his definition of politician? Do I run down other political parties? Uh, Do I just raise problems? And if I told him, if that is your definition of being a politician, I'm not. I'm not a politician. I'll do whatever I pray I'll do, and just use my principles that I'm used to in the leadership in the political arena. A very long question, a long answer to your question.
No, well, you've taken us through that path of that transformation and the reasons, and I appreciate that. Now, the name of the party, Unity Fiji Party. What is the aim of your party? And if I may add another quick question to that, what does the party's name mean or stand for?
Yeah, thanks. Well, the party, the word unity is very predominant there. Yeah, we were concerned of the attempt by this government, and they're continuing to do that, to unite Fiji by legislation. You cannot unite a country by laws. It seems like to us that this government was trying to create a new identity altogether. That will not unite Fiji. In fact, it will separate us a lot more. So we were wanting to put into place a unity that promotes the respect of the identities that we have. So our mission, or sorry, our vision is unity in diversity.
Okay.
That is our vision. It's not imposing unity by laws. It never worked. The other was we need to change how politics are played in Fiji. They put themselves first, not people. I've watched that in my career, and I watch it after leaving my employment. We need to put people first, and that's the key. And our key word, or what do you call it, a motto for Unity Fiji is people's first. We must
Okay.
put people first. So we want also to try to unite all political parties, the opposition,
All right.
and that's why
Come
unity is there.
we'll come to the purpose or the aim of uniting other political parties further down, because I've got specific questions for that. You
Okay.
mentioned unity in diversity. Now, from my perspective, politics in Fiji has been based on ethnicity lines for many, many, many years. How do you bring about unity? What's your party's vision? How would you be different?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Before we formed Unity Fiji, we could have joined an existing party. That was the alternative. But as we surveyed the parties, the opposition parties that are around, we were concerned about the polarization of political parties. And that still happens. That's a legacy of the past. And I think we have to make a change. So we decided that we needed a multiracial and united party. Uh, when you talk about unity, there are many levels of it. The one, of course, in the party membership, the one also in the party executives. We have Indo-Fijian as the general secretary. We talk about the board of the party. 25% of the members of the board are Indo-Fijians. But I think the test of multiracialism is really in the policies that you uphold, that you fight for. It must be inclusive, and we have been all inclusive. Ethnicity is a factor, economic and social. We cannot push that to aside. So that must be taken into account. Education is not a privilege, it is a right to give up our children education. We must heal the wounds of the past. There are many gaping wounds around that we need to really heal. We must recognize the minority groups and lift their profiles, appreciate their efforts in the history of this country. So that's multiracialism for us. But sadly, let me just point out one thing. Over the years of political life, multiracialism to many indigenous Fijians is that we don't take care of their issues. That has been propagated by politicians. And I must stress now that we will fight for better lives whether you are Itoke or whether you are Indo-Fijian or you're the minority race. We have to do that. We will make better use of our resources, whether you are a resource owner or a resource user. So we will ensure economic and physical security of everyone. So I think you have it there. We have a united and prosperous Fiji that is good, in the interest of everyone.
Your party is fairly new. You contested the 2018 elections for the first time. Tell me if or whether your party has encountered obstacles, being a fairly new party as you fought your first elections and getting ready for the next elections.
Absolutely, yeah. Uh, it has been an experience for me uh, in the 2018 election. There were many obstacles. We were a new party, as you noted, so getting a good team together was the number one hurdle. Just getting a good team together, a good team that understands the laws of election now and how we could go about the business. But also what we experienced was the lack of independence of the media. They discriminated against new parties and old parties. We fought for slots on TV programs and even on radios. We couldn't get them. They easily offered slots to other parties. We were pushed aside. We called for debates. We were not heard. So I think the press plays a very important role in our elections, and of course finance. We struggle with finance, uh, and the last one is how voters vote
Right.
in Fiji, and that's a big issue. Yeah, it's like a herd mentality that sweeps the country. They never vote for people that will bring them what they want. They vote for popularity. Is that right? Is wrong? It's an issue that voter will have to. So, and we just ran out of time. We had only 10 months to really make people be aware of our party.
So as I've mentioned, 2018 elections were the first for your party. What do you think were the lessons learned from that experience as you head towards 2022 elections?
Lessons learned, yeah. I guess you need time. You need time to prepare, which we now have. As I said, we need a good team, and our team is much better now uh, with the 2022 election. We need to campaign smartly uh, in compliance with the law, and which we are rolling out, yeah, right now. So those are the major, maybe three lessons from the 2018 election.
You are watching Sashi Singh's Talking Point, and my chief guest today is Mr. Savenaca Narube, the leader of the Unity Fiji Party. Let me now direct this interview, Mr. Narube, towards issues that are affecting Fiji as a nation today. I would welcome your views on these subjects. Let me begin by asking, what are your views on the current socio-economic situation in Fiji?
We really in a crisis on social economic situation in Fiji. I think we all know that. Our major problem is rising poverty. And we saw that report that places 32% of our population beneath the poverty line. That equates to about 350,000 people. And that includes family. And the issue is that 75% of that under poverty are Itoke, indigenous, indigenous race. And this was taken before COVID, this survey. So imagine now what the numbers could be. I place it over 40% now. And the widening disparity between the rich and the poor. And the government plays a role there. And I'm sorry to say, they have favored more the rich rather than the poor in their policies. So poverty is the root of many social issues that we are facing now. The crime, the drugs, the sex crimes, the family breakdown, and so forth. So I think that's a big issue, poverty. The second is the unsustainable fiscal policies. Our debt is out of control. So I saw that quite early, the rapid increase in spending. Spending more than double from 2006 to 2021. And revenue, of course, was not rising as fast. So what happened? Our debt is exploding. So that is now, in my view, unsustainable. The third is our economy. You said the economy. And I look at that and I say, well, that is basically from poor economic management. We cannot base growth, economic growth, on government expenses. You can't. A first year economics student will be able to tell this minister for the economy that can't happen. Can't happen. And the result is debt explosion. So that's exactly what we are facing. We must base growth on the private sector, including the small and micro enterprises. But government is intervening very heavily in the private sector, playing favorites, dividing and rule. So that's why the private sector is not realizing its full potential. We must or create that enabling environment for the private sector to flourish and create jobs. Yeah. And we are ignoring our natural resources. How can we do that? That's how, to me, it should be the platform of growth. And unemployment, I know, is rising. I mean, the official figures place it at 6%. My guess is 20%. And the youth unemployment of that is much higher than that number. And the other is corruption. Corruption is rife here in Fiji. It's never been this bad as before. So those are, to me, the social economic issues that we are facing right now. and they won't go away after the COVID. No, we need a sustained plan to address all those into the medium to long term.
Let me touch on some of those issues that you've raised and seek a response from you on those specific matters. So employment, as you've mentioned, is a major, major problem. What is your view, or rather, what do you think should happen to at least try to alleviate this problem in terms of unemployment?
Yeah, sure. As I mentioned, the employment must be driven from the private sector.
Good.
And when I say private sector, I mean small and medium enterprises with that. And they must be driven from that. You can't create employment in the public sector. You can't, because you just explode or just increase your borrowing. So you must create that environment in the private sector that I was mentioning.
So
You do intervene.
how do you then bring that confidence in the private sector to increase employability? It's a
Yeah.
question of confidence, I guess.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Private sector thrives on certainty. It thrives on confidence. And you look at our rating on the ease of doing business in Fiji. You know, we were 52nd in 2006. You know where we are now? We're over 100. I think 106 in that index. So we have deteriorated a lot in that. So we need to grow that private sector confidence and so forth that you mentioned, certainty in policies, and reduce or eliminate the government intervention in that sector.
Now, Mr. Narube, you also mentioned corruption. Why do you think there is such a high level of corruption that prevails in government circles?
Oh, yes. Transparency is the key to that. Accountability. And these two issues, accountability and transparency, in my view, are the major problems of this government. Transparency and accountability. So I think we need a clear separation of roles. Ministers must not take on an operational responsibility that is for the officials to do. No? Because if they do that, they delve into the tenders, they delve into the awards of work, it enables corruption. They go into they interfere into the appointments of senior positions. That's nepotism, right? And there is an element of fear, I'm sorry to say, that this government has created. So the civil servants, the officials, will just tell the ministers what they want to hear. So that means the decision making is compromised.
When you talk of the element of fear, what do you exactly mean by that?
Yeah, the fear. Oh, the fear manifests itself in many ways. As I said, in the civil servant, if you do not toe the line, you can be fired right there and then. And that's the fear that I'm talking about in the civil service. It's quite predominant. So there's also a fear that manifests itself in the harassment and victimization of anybody that opposes this government. That's the fear.
Okay.
We went through that fear in the last election, and it's still very much present.
Let us now talk about the forthcoming elections, which hopefully will take place sometime after July next year. There has been in recent times much discussions on the electoral system, the office of the supervisor of elections, and also on the supervisor of elections himself. As we all know, for some time now, Fiji has a new system of voting in the last two elections, the Dihon system. What are your views on the current voting system, electoral system in place?
Yeah. The Dihon system has its advantages, but I think a lot more disadvantages than advantages for a country like Fiji. As you know, about 50 countries in the world adopt some kind of Dihon system in their voting. We are the only one in the Pacific that is adopting that. Uh, a few issues here, I think. The, it doesn't represent the wishes of the people in Parliament. It doesn't. You know, you get the leader that drags in all his wins all the votes and drags everyone together with that. So we're voting for the party, and the leadership, of course, takes all the votes with him. We saw that with Fiji First in the last two elections. But the most worrying for me is the threshold. The threshold, which is 5%. If you
5%,
do not
yes.
reach 5%, as we didn't in 2018, your votes are totally discarded. 5% equates to about 3 seats. So it's either 0 or 3.
Yes.
What about those votes that are discarded? It could be 1 seat or 2 seats. But in this system, no, it's not. So I think it favors the larger parties than the new parties. And there has been a survey done, and this Dihon system is the least proportionate system in the world. So why are we adopting it? So I think we need to review that and see its appropriateness to democracy and representations in Fiji.
Now, there have been a lot said in recent weeks, recent months, about the Office of the Supervisor of Elections and the Supervisor of Elections. What are your views on these two subjects?
My
And
view is,
and 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 if I may add, my apologies, and if I may just add to this as well, your party,
that
the Unity Fiji Party, together with your two coalition partners, recently questioned the Office of the Supervisor of Elections as well.
yes, yes, I'll be very glad to elaborate on that. Uh, the elections office, the Fiji elections office, which is electoral commission, and of course the supervisor of elections, they must receive the utmost confidence of the voters. That is very, very critical. And as we see the last two elections, we see a serious lack of independence of those institutions between themselves and government. So we see that as a big, serious conflict. Under the Constitution, the Electoral Commission needs to deliver a free and fair elections. The International Observer Group in the last two elections did not say that our elections was free and fair. It says it was credible. Credible and free and fair are not the same. So,
True.
so there are amendments to the laws that have been made recently that remove the appeal of opposition parties against decisions by SOE to the High Court. They have removed that. All appeals should go to Electoral Commission, which is the SOE is the secretary. How can that be? So what we have filed to the appointing authority of the SOE is a complaint on the insubordination of the person and the poor judgment. He has lost many cases that he took to court. The recent one is Nico's case. Yeah. And way back in
Right.
2014, the High Court ruled that he was in subordination to the Electoral Commission. So we really need to clean up that. The one on the chairman of the Electoral Commission, I think it involves a serious, to me, conspiracy between government and the commission to retain him and to control the decisions of the chairman. Chairman was being investigated, as you know, for serious abuse of the trust funds. And this has been 2 years. It's been going on 2 years. So he has been granted only a limited license to practice by the Legal Practitioners Unit in 2 years. So government knew that. Why didn't it move? And that's why I'm saying it's a conspiracy to hold him there and have a firm influence on what his decision would be. So it's an elaboration of what we think the electoral commissioner and the SOE.
All right. Now, there's been a coalition between your party, the Unity Fiji Party, the Fiji Labour Party, and the Freedom Alliance Party. What are the objectives of this alliance or partnership?
Yeah, let me just explain the discussion on coalition. Just a brief one to put that into context.
Sure.
Coalition discussion started in 2014. I joined in 2018, but this was scuttled by Sitiveni Rambuka as the leader of Soderpa because he wanted to fight the elections on his own. But since 2018, after the 2018 election, I was quite clear in my mind that the opposition party, the best way to fight and win this 2022 election is through coalition. So I've joined initiatives to bring the coalition together, a few of them, but unfortunately it has been met. I've met opposition leaders, Rambuka, Biman, Ngavoka, Mahendra Chaudhary, several times. I have outlined the many advantages that unification would bring: finance, coordination, greater scrutiny, the quality of candidates. There's so many. But I think the danger that we in the opposition think that we will all do better in 2018 on our own. And I'm emphasizing to my colleagues, the 2022 election will not be the same as 2018. It will not be. This government will throw the kitchen sink at us. They are there to survive this election. So we must get together. And
so this coalition between the coalition between the Fiji Labour Party, Freedom Alliance, and your party, is this coalition going to fight the election under one banner? Will you be fielding joint candidates? How is it going to work out?
Look, we haven't signed any coalition.
Okay.
Not yet. We have
Okay.
signed a MOU for us to work together and try to get that coalition. As many
Point
as
taken.
possible, as many parties as possible. So we're working at that. And we have established a coordinating center outside the three parties. And with an independent technical team to consult with all parties and all interested people on the coalition. So it has started.
All right. Now, you mentioned that the International Observer Group in the 2018 elections said that the elections were credible. And the key words you used was they didn't mention free and fair.
Yeah.
Do you think the forthcoming elections in 2022 will be free and fair given the circumstances that you find yourselves in? There's a number of issues in terms of the elections office, etc. So do you think it's going to be free and fair?
Well, to be free and fair, we will have firstly to ensure that the elections office receives our confidence of the voters. We have to ensure that proper scrutiny is done by opposition parties of the process. We need to look at the environment, not only the process, the environment that the elections will be taken in 2022. In my view, that environment doesn't enable us confidence that it will be free and fair. We need the press, we need the media to be independent, to report independently. There were cases that we believe that the government breached the law in the last election, but they were not taken to task. So the discriminatory aspect of compliance must be there. So we need to put all these things together if we want a free and fair election in 2022.
Talking about media, there is an element of fear, I believe, that also prevails in terms of the media. Some of the media organizations have been taken to task, and it seems that that fear does exist within certain media circles. Would I be correct in assuming that?
I think you will be very correct. Sir. Yeah. The media, as we saw in the Fiji Times case, they're quite they're taking very cautionary approach to political reporting. Yeah, many of the issues we have raised, the other parties, the other media parties, haven't taken that, haven't reported that. These are very strong national issues. So, government ownership of the media is prevalent. Where would it be for government to get into the media? Hmm? This government, right from the word go, they have decided to go with two media, and that is the control issues that they have decided to run this country. We don't have a free media.
So if we talk about certain aspects of the media organizations living under fear, so to say, or operating under fear, then do you think the current system in Fiji allows ordinary people, and more so politicians, particularly of the opposition, free speech and freedom of expression?
No, no, that's a full no. Yeah, we don't have that freedom of association, a freedom of speech as guaranteed under the Constitution. We have a draconian Public Order Act that stops us pointing, saying those things, expressing our views. So no, that has been very much part of this government from the beginning.
You are watching Sashi Singh's Talking Point, and our chief guest today is Mr. Savenaca Narube, the leader of the Unity Fiji Party. Mr. Narube, let us now look at the function of Parliament, and in particular, the business of government. In your view, how has government business been conducted in Fiji's Parliament in recent years?
Yeah, you talk about the roles of government, the roles of parliament, the roles of judiciary, and the separation of those roles. We all know the separation of roles. Government runs uh, the government, of course, the machinery of government, and of course, parliament scrutinizes the running of government, particularly from the opposition. They have a distinct separation of roles. But look at what parliament debate is like. The use of this, the abuse of this standing order 51 that shortens debates of bills to a few hours. There's no necessary to some bills to discuss only for a few hours. So that scrutiny by parliament of government is compromised. Again, in a long list of issues that this government has put in place to stop or to lessen scrutiny. So again, this is just uh, poor governance and and the separation of roles. The opposition, I think, to me, should be more aggressive and to look at the data. To me, the best defense or the best attack to a government is to throw data at them, huh? To diffuse any propaganda in parliament. So let the data speak. So I think that separation of role has been heavily compromised, and that leads to laws that are not consulted and laws that really are not for the interest of the nation.
What changes would you like to see in the manner in which Parliament functions in Fiji?
Yeah, we need to respect the spirit of all those standing orders. And some bills are needed to be accelerated through Parliament. Some bills don't, many bills don't. So, can Parliament respect that? The voting by acclamation, it's been proven that's unconstitutional. And still, they want voting to be by acclamation. So I guess the opposition can lift its scrutiny and really challenge government on very, very fundamental and substantive issues. So I think with those changes, we could improve the parliament and their roles.
So, my next question, though, is given the way government functions, given the way the opposition is treated, what do you see as the greatest political challenges in Fiji?
Oh, yeah, the political challenge to me is the first one is political leadership. We have been facing a crisis on political leadership. We are not putting people first. Politicians are putting themselves first. So we need to have the right leader that can solve our problems. That's number one. Number two is what we have talked about earlier: is the independence and the credibility of our election machinery and entities. So the third is registration. You know, over 170,000 people didn't vote last time. That's a huge number. And there's a confusion on the expiry of election IDs. So there's a lot of issues there on registration. I'm just asking people, please register. And in voting, vote for on people that can bring those issues to us and our family. So I think those are the four major challenges I see in the
All
political.
right, thank you. Now, let me turn my attention once again to your Unity Fiji party.
Mhm.
I believe that your party has a unity strategic plan. What is the strategic plan, if I may please ask you?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has a strategic plan. I suppose that's just outlining what we need to do uh, from here onwards till the election, and perhaps even after the election. So in there we'll have the manifesto, which we hope to publish, say, about 3 or 4 months before the election. In there will be the candidates, how they are selected, and the mix of candidates that will be for running or standing in the next election. So those
You,
will be what is in the strategic plan.
You mentioned a manifesto being released a few months before the election. In your 2018 manifesto,
Mhm.
your party stated that it would empower the nation by providing visionary and inclusive leadership. What did you mean by that? And how would you achieve that given that you'll be contesting the election against some bigger parties?
Yeah. Uh, the big definition uh, is situational. I guess we are looking at the 2018 results in saying who is bigger and who is smaller. I think the next election will determine the new mix of parties. I think for us, as I mentioned, leadership is very important. Our unity, leadership in that unity is absolutely important. We must have a vision of what we want Fiji to be. And as I mentioned earlier, we want a unity that lasts. People feel united. They are heard. They are included in the decision making. So we need that. We need skills in leadership, particularly in important areas like economy and and finance. And you must be inclusive of all people. That's why what we meant by visionary and inclusive leadership.
Earlier in the program, you spoke of healing the wounds of the past.
Oh yes.
How would one go about achieving this? How would you try to achieve this?
Yes, yes. To us, that's very important for unity going forward. That we look back and see the people that have been hurt in the past. How can we address it? And we're looking at perhaps looking at the materials way back to that and see how we can resolve some of the issues that are still with us from those days. We look at the four coups that we have had. People have been hurt. People are still hurting from there. And how can we resolve that? A few other issues that have been around. Peacekeepers have been in the Middle East. They've come to us and said, "Well, we haven't been paid allowances." Uh, the Monasabu people have come to us and say, "Well, we have been shortchanged." So there are many others that are like that. How are we going to resolve it? We're going to first understand the issue, understand what they want, and see what the implications are on resources that we have. And some of this may not need too much resources, but it needs recognition and appreciation and lifting the profile of those issues. Thank you, Sash.
Do you think that perhaps an establishment of a reconciliation commission would be of assistance in a country like Fiji in trying to heal the wounds of the past?
Absolutely. Yes. We that is in our thinking as well, to set up a commission of that kind to examine many of these issues. I think it'll go a long way in bringing everybody together and facilitate the unity that we all want.
Very good. Now, your 2018 manifesto also made mention of the fact, and I think you've answered partially this afternoon, but the important keyword I took out from reading that, it made mention that your party would empower communities. That's a very key word. Restore democracy and good governance. We've spoken about transparency, accountability, good governance this afternoon. But the key word there, that it would empower communities. How would you do that?
Yeah, yeah. Empowering is sometimes used very loosely in politics. Empowering, in my understanding of the word, is that you not only involve the people in the decision making, you consult and listen, but more importantly, you give them the tools to provide them the tools that they were enabled to do their jobs, which basically for them to lift the livelihoods of their families and themselves, and perhaps the jobs and businesses that they would like to get into, empower them with tools that they are that enable them to do that. For our youths, yeah, it's basically employment and sports. It's one of the issues that they would like to be empowered with, and of course education. So, as I mentioned, we think education should be a right, not just a privilege based on your income. It should be a right for every child to be educated to as high as a level that he or she can attain. So that's what I mean by empowering.
Mr. Narumbe, the Unity Fiji Party, what does it bring to the people of Fiji?
Yeah, we would like to highlight a few differences that this party will bring to the people. Firstly, as I said, leadership, a proven leadership, a leadership that you can trust to deliver what we have said we will deliver. We have the skills, the second one, to reduce poverty, increase jobs for our school leavers. We have the skills and the experience to do that. And we have the skills and experience to rescue our finance from the crisis that we are facing. And of course, we want to eradicate corruption. Corruption is really a scourge of our development. It not only misuses the people money, it really hurts our development as well. So those are the issues that we would like to bring. We are different from other parties, perhaps in leadership, reduction in poverty, economic growth, and restoration of stability in finance.
And finally, let me give you an opportunity to address the electorate. What is your message to the electorate as we head towards Christmas and the end of 2021 and look forward to the 2022 elections?
Thank you. Thank you for that last question. Let me just say that our support is really growing. We have 3 years already to prepare for this election. We have a little bit more time left, and our support is growing. Some opinion polls, whatever uh, trust you can put to the polls, and that's the only thing we can gauge right now. So our support is much higher than some of the established parties. And that means that we're not small anymore. Forget it. I mean, we will be contesting this election as one of the seeded parties uh, come the next 22 election. But two messages or three messages, please, to the voters. As I have already mentioned that, please register. Please, I know there will be time needed to do that, but please go out and register. And the second, please vote. So I said 170,000 of people in the last elections didn't vote. Imagine if they did. It would have changed the course of this country. And the last, you know, vote on a leader that you believe and trust can deliver what you want in your life, that can bring hope to our families and to ourselves. Fiji is a beautiful country. I travel a lot of in to other countries, and I'm always glad to step back onto our land. It's a beautiful country. Let's keep it that way. Let's restore it that way. Let's bring back the Fiji that we know, the Fiji like what the world should be. We have lost that. This election, bring that back, so we can go on and live in this paradise we call home.
Mr. Savenaca Narube, the leader of the Unity Fiji Party, thank you very much. Big Vinaka Bakalevu to you for being the chief guest on Sashi Singh's Talking Point today.
Thank you.
I appreciate you taking time to discuss what your party stands for, and also in discussing issues of major concern to the people of Fiji. May I take this opportunity in extending an open invitation to you and your party's delegates to appear in the program in the new year at any time of your choosing. And thank you, Mr. Narube, and may I wish you and your loved ones a very Merry Christmas and a happy, happy New Year.
Thank you, Shashi, and thank you again for this opportunity. I would like to also wish everyone, and yourself included, and your family, a happy Christmas. This year has been a difficult year for everybody. We have come through a lot this year. To be where we are, hopefully we are on the verge of coming back, restoring our position. We must be grateful for that. Have a very wonderful festive season. Merry Christmas, and definitely, to me, a very prosperous New Year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure talking to you. A breath of fresh air, may I say. A lot of inspirational words of wisdom that's been discussed this afternoon from you. Vinavalevu, sir. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Mr. Narube. More than
Thank you.
manda.
Mother.
Thank you.
Mother.
Well, let me say, that was quite an interesting discussion this afternoon with the leader of the Unity Party, Unity Fiji Party, Mr. Savenaca Narube. And I repeat that in the interest of fairness, I have, as I've said in the last 2 or 3 programs, extended an invitation to the Attorney General, Mr. Ayar Sayed Qayyum, to participate in this program. I have written, as directed by his personal assistant, sent an email, and I have not had a response as yet. Hopefully, someone in the current government will agree to participate in the program in the new year. Well, that is all for this year on Shashi Singh's Talking Point. Episode 5 has come to an end. A big thank you to my 2 contributors, Dennis Rounds and Nikhil Singh, for their input in the program. I would also like to thank all our viewers for watching this program. The figures released by Facebook has been phenomenal in terms of the reach. Last week's episode 4, for instance, reached 8,500 odd people. Overall, from November 16th to December 13th, the SSTP posts reached just over 28,000 people and had just about 8,500 post engagements. We hope to be back in the new year, and let me wish you, all our viewers, a very, very Merry Christmas and a happy and safe New Year. Have a wonderful time, a joyous and rewarding and blessed New Year. This is Shashi Singh bidding you all goodbye, namaste, and ni samode.